All right, it's your boy Nyabo, the good, the bad, the ugly, the Sacramento Kings, 30 and 52, 16, count them 1-6 straight years of not making the playoffs. I mean, it's hard to find something good in this, but I'm a positive person, so I'm gonna go ahead and try. Let's start off with
on the clock. Davion sticking right with Donovan Mitchell. Great defense. Off night. All over him.
off night. They call a boy off night because if he defends you, you're gonna have an off night. Davion Mitchell. Now, if you look at his stats, they're decent. 11 points, 4 assists a game, 42% from the field, 32% from three, 65% from the free throw line. You would look at this and you would say, hey, what's so good about this? The good thing is when De'Aaron Fox got hurt, someone who's going to feature in this show a little bit later, but when he got hurt towards the end of the season, Davion Mitchell took off. So Fox got hurt on March 16th, and Davion took full-time point guard duties. So he averaged about 20 points a game, but most importantly, he averaged 10 assists a game. And he showed some playmaking that I didn't really think he had. If you combine this with his elite defense, I think you might have a cornerstone for this franchise to build on. He's a hard worker. His brother up in Utah is known for having hard-working, skills as well, that being part of his toolbox. And I wouldn't be surprised if he improves his jumper, which is something that needs to definitely improve, especially his three-point shot. But I wouldn't be surprised if he takes a massive leap in year two. So one of the good things that the Kings have going is their last year's lottery pick, Davion Mitchell. The bad's got to be De'Aaron Fox. Now, Kings fans, I'm like you. When he got drafted in his first couple of years, I said, hey, this guy might be John Wall 2.0. And, John Wall's been hurt for a couple of years and hasn't played in the league in a couple of years. But the truth of the matter is, comparing De'Aaron Fox to John Wall is a massive slap in the face of John Wall. He's not the passer that John Wall is. He doesn't push the pace like John Wall does. He doesn't defend like John Wall does. The only thing that him and John Wall have in common is that they both were point guards at Kentucky, and they both love the worst jump shot in the league, the mid-range jumper. De'Aaron Fox in a three-point shooting league shot 29%. Once again, 29% from three. If you combine this with his love of that terrible shot, I mean, you have one of the biggest empty calorie scorers in the league. You add this to his massive contract, the richest contract extension in Kings history, you have probably one of the most untradeable assets in the league. And you might say, hey, he averaged 24 points a game. How is he untradeable? Well, this is the thing. In a guard league, this is definitely a guard league. If you rank the guards in the NBA, I would say about 20 of them are better than him. In a league with 30 teams, to be paying the richest contract in your team's history to a guy who 2/3 of the league has better options than doesn't make any sense. Now, if you disagree with me, look at this list that I compiled. And hey, you might say, hey, one or two guys on this list are not as good as De'Aaron Fox, but even if you do that, he's 15, 16, 17. That's still league average. You're paying $30 million for a league average player who can't shoot, who can't defend, and doesn't get his teammates involved. Now, the ugly. I mean, if you couldn't get uglier than what's going on with De'Aaron Fox, it has to be this Tyrese Halliburton trade. Somehow, the Kings front office had the bright idea to trade Tyrese Halliburton, one of the few guys that actually wanted to be on the Kings, to the Pacers for a big man who cannot shoot, who cannot defend, and someone who his own GM said was not a superstar. In December, the Kings GM had to apologize to Sabonis because he had a slip up where he actually told the truth and said, hey, we're looking for a real star. And then people pointed out to him, Sabonis is an all-star. Like, yeah, he's an all-star, but I mean, we're looking for a star. We're looking for someone who can get us to the playoffs perennially. And, the NBA media, they unanimously thought this trade was ridiculous.
What's the instant reaction around the league to Sacramento trading Tyrese Halliburton?
Stunned. Tyrese Halliburton was stunned, Malika. The league is stunned at this trade and the fact that he was even available. I think there were a lot of teams who thought if we knew we could have gotten Tyrese Halliburton, we would have been really knocking at the door in Sacramento. We'll talk about it more later, but this is a move. This was a player who everyone had thought, including Tyrese Halliburton, that he'd be the cornerstone for their future.
And if you listen to that Woj report, it's ridiculous that you would trade this young budding star and not even have a bidding war for him. These teams being shocked, part of the reason they're shocked is like, we could have gave you better for him than Sabonis if you guys would have told us that he was available. And Kings PR tried to sell it as the Fox and the Ox, which is one of the dumbest nicknames for a duo that I've ever heard. But they tried to sell it as a win now move. And what ended up happening is they had a worse win percentage with Sabonis on their team than when he was not on their team. So, and Tyrese Halliburton, he went to Indiana and he was killing it. So, I mean, with the Kings, it wasn't a good season. Obviously, 16 straight years of missing the playoffs. So how can we right the ship? Once again, I told you I'm a positive person. So let's talk about the offseason, how we right the ship. So first, so when you're looking at the offseason, let's see what we have so far. You have Mike Brown, who was recently hired as the head coach, who's the assistant coach at the Warriors. You have the number 4 overall pick. Kings got lucky in the lottery and moved up. So they have the number 4 overall pick. And you have about $10 million in cap space, but you have a lot of restricted free agents. So where do we begin? All right, so let's go ahead and start with some trades that they can make. So the first trade, and you're seeing it here on the screen here, Pascal Siakam and Precious Achiuwa for the number 4 pick overall that the Kings just got, Harrison Barnes and Rashard Holmes. So let me give you my reasoning for this. The reason why I think the Kings should do it, I think it's obvious. You get a bona fide star in Pascal Siakam. You get a young player on the come up with Precious Achiuwa. And you can really put yourself in contention to make the playoffs. I talked about how good the West is going to be next year. And if you add a player like Siakam, who brought his team to the playoffs in the East, which was I think, undisputably better conference this past season, if you bring a player like that onto your team, then you can really start to say, hey, we can make the playoffs with a core of Pascal Siakam, the Fox and the Ox. Once again, a dumbass nickname. So I just think that this is a move that Toronto would be interested in as well. There's been some rumors that OG Anunoby was unhappy with his role and wanted to grow more in his role. Obviously, there's Scotty Barnes, who's a nice young player. And there's been rumors that Masai has been kind of antsy with this team because they're not a contender, but they're not bad enough to get another high pick. So this kind of allows them to thread the needle to where they can have 2 lottery picks and Scotty Barnes and whoever they draft with their number 4 overall pick to look for in the future with massive upside. And then you're still good enough with the Harrison Barnes and Rashard Holmes, 2 players that fit the needs that would be left by Pascal Siakam and Precious Achiuwa leaving, to say that, hey, we can still make the playoffs. So you can kind of thread that needle. And Harrison Barnes has been someone that a lot of teams have been interested in for a while. So you could always trade him as well. So that's what I would do as far as that. As far as the free agency tip, they have a lot of free agents. I would bring back the whole lot of them. You see here on your screen, If they were able to pull off a trade like that, you would have Fox, Pascal Siakam, and Sabonis as your obvious centers, and you would have to fill out the roster. I think Chiezu Metu showed signs last season. I think I would definitely slide him into the 4. He has a lot of upside, massive frame, massive athleticism, showed some ability to dribble and to shoot last year. So I would hope that, this is someone that's working on their game, and you could slot him into the 4 spot and then slot Justin Holiday into the 2 spot. He's someone who's a defender, long, rangy, can shoot. Then you could talk about a team that definitely suits Mike Brown's profile of defense-oriented team with Fox, who I think has been a bad defender, but I don't think he's really had a coach to really push him to be better defensively. Justin Holiday, Pascal Siakam, Chiezi Metu, and Sabonis. You have a long team, an athletic team, a rangy team. And then, things start to make more sense. Dante DiVincenzo is a free agent. I would definitely bring him back, pay what it costs to take care of him. I believe he's a restricted free agent, so they would be able to match. I think they would match. I don't think they should make the mistake that they did with Bogdanovich. You're trying to build a roster with as many good players as possible. So I would pay whatever it costs to keep him. You have Davion Mitchell, who I talked about, who I'm excited for on the bench. And maybe you could possibly move Fox depending on the situation. But in this scenario, you would keep Fox, and Davion Mitchell would be the 3rd guard off the bench, with Dante DiVincenzo being a wing. So that's a good solid 7, with Precious Achiuwa being 8, good solid 8 players. You have the Trey Lyles kid that they had, and you could bring in another player as well with your mid-level inception, but that's a solid 8. And to me, that's an 8 that you could look at and say, okay, we could really make the playoffs, and making playoffs is the most important thing to this team. So that's it. The good, the bad, the ugly, the Sacramento Kings. Once again, I do the smoke shows on Thursday, so let me know what you think about this. If you disagree, leave a comment. I'll respond. Rate and subscribe. The game is a game. Go.